I'm afraid, Tricia, that is racism.
Hang on just a minute.
The charge is...
Oh, no,
let me finish my question.
No.
Let me finish my question. The charge was racism against the royal family. Okay. At the time, they produced no evidence. Her version of events was nearly 2 years after Harry's timeline for when this happened. They've never named the royal member who said this stuff, and now we get told casually it's not racism.
Stop it.
All right, can you just play that again? Because there must be something wrong at my line. I didn't hear either Harry or Meghan use the word racism. I heard you use it. I saw the press use it. I didn't actually hear them use the word. And that's when we had that robust exchange of words, I think what I said to you is that I do get fed up with other people labelling, white people, labelling what is and isn't racist to black people. Now, if they'd actually used the word racism, I would be agreeing.
Come off it, Trish. Honestly, this is utterly ridiculous.
So what is racism?
She was asked by... I'll tell you what racism is. I'll tell you what racism is.
Oh, good. Hang on, just...
Yeah, I know I'm white.
Let me get comfortable.
I know I... Hang on.
Let me get comfortable.
I know I'm white.
Piers Morgan's about to lecture a black woman about racism.
No, I'm about to tell you...
racism.
I'm about to give you an example of racism as a middle-aged white man who I know is the enemy to you.
You know,
let me tell you what an example of racism is. An example of racism would be somebody expressing concern about the skin colour of a baby from a mixed-race marriage, and when the interviewer then says, what, if it was darker, that would be a problem? Yes, you may think that. That is an example of somebody expressing racism. And that became the headline and narrative for the next 2 years after the interview. And for you to shamelessly sit there and pretend that wasn't what they meant is utter bilge.
If there were more black people in the media, in the tabloid media, they may have had the opportunity to look into that and explain it a little bit more. I didn't see it as racism. I saw it, and that's why I got cross when you decided to label it racism.
I didn't decide to do anything.
When we were having that exchange,
they literally confirmed to Oprah Winfrey that a member of the royal family had expressed concern about the skin colour of their baby, and if the baby's skin colour was too dark, that would be a problem.
When a black person attempts to talk about this in other than headline news, when I'm trying to have a reasoned conversation, I get shouted over. Why is my experience, or what black people experience, why do we have no currency? Why am I not allowed to explain
They've literally had front-page headlines about the racist royal family for 2 years. How much more currency...
Stop it.
Does Meghan Markle want?
No one has called the royal family racist. I mean,
for God's sake, honestly, this is ridiculous.
I would say it's built on the Commonwealth, and we already know Charles has had problems. You know, they've talked about the crown that Camilla may or may not use because the history of one of the diamonds, the Koh-i-Noor diamonds and what have you. We know that the royalty and many royal families around the world were built on the backs of slavery, racism, Commonwealth countries having goods stolen or taken away from them. We know that. Unfortunately, it's not taught in school.
Sorry, that's got nothing to do... Sorry, but with respect, Tricia, that has nothing to do...
The history is racist.
You can't just speak endlessly without me jumping in. Sorry. With great respect to you, you can't just keep talking. I'm allowed to ask questions. It's an interview, right? My question for you is...
but you're not allowed to make statements without listening to what somebody says.
Meghan Markle made a direct charge, supported by her husband, that a member of the royal family had expressed concern about the potential skin colour of their baby, which, if it was too dark, would be a problem. That is racism. They made a charge. Yes, that's called racism, If you think that if a baby's too dark, it's a problem, that's called racism. Sorry to have to lecture you about racism. I know I'm not allowed to as a white man, but actually, that is an example of racism.
Everything. Tell us about my history. Tell us about the history of black people and
what's that got to do with what they said?
Because they didn't say it was racism.
Yes, they... did.
Somebody else used that word. They stepped aside from using that word, I think, very deliberately.
Why did they win an award?
Tell us about unconscious.
I genuinely believe that if me and my family can reconcile, can put our differences behind us, but first there needs to be conversation and accountability. And if that doesn't happen, then that's very sad.
Compensation and accountability. Is that a joke? Is that a joke? You're the one doing all the attacking. You're the bully. You're the one trashing your family in public, not the family that stayed silent throughout this onslaught that's been going on now for several years. What's sad, Harry, is your public self-destruction and the remorseless way you've savaged your own loved ones to airbrush yourself.
Okay.
Please don't make my final days a misery, King Charles said to Harry after Prince Philip's memorial. We know that because Harry's told us. He's revealed that most excruciatingly private conversation with his father, our new king. Imagine what he would have said if a tabloid newspaper had revealed that conversation. It's disgusting. How dare you invade my family's privacy? This proves what I say about you all. You're revolting. Yeah. Maybe. But what does it make you? Now, you've done exactly the same thing that you've been ranting about for years. Harry and Meghan, let's be clear, have sold their royal souls for a life as reality stars, trading every private cough and splutter for cash. The royal family has said nothing about this volley of abuse. It's maintained a dignified silence, which I think is the correct response.
Are you serious?
Because without the royal gravitas, without the titles, Harry and Meghan, well, what are they? They're just another version of the Kardashians. They've gone for broke with this latest instalment of The Only Way is Sussex, but we might finally be closing in,
Almost there.
hopefully, on the final episode. Well, joining me in the studio is Talk TV presenters Sharon Osbourne, Vanity Fair royal editor Katie Nicholl, from New York, Talk TV's Trisha Goddard, and Princess Diana's former butler, Paul Burrell. So a stellar lineup to discuss all this. Paul Burrell, let me start with you. You, like most people, get a kicking in the book. He dismisses you as self-serving, writing a book just to put one side of the point of view. I mean, I had to laugh when I read that. This is by a guy who's literally just done exactly that.
Yes, but Piers, you knew my story. At the time, I was being trashed by everyone, and I went to the highest court in the land, and I had to survive. I had to feed my family. Everything I had was taken away from me. Harry's in a totally different position. He's an angry, petulant, privileged prince who constantly blames others for, with no accountability on his part. His mother would be absolutely appalled by, don't only undermine himself, he's undermining his country,
That doesn't make sense.
his family, the institution, which is the monarchy, which his mother was very proud of. It beggars belief. I don't recognize the young man that I grew up with. I don't recognize that man anymore. I just don't know what's happened to him. I think he's lost the plot completely, Piers. This book shouldn't be called Spare, it should be called Blame, because he's blaming everybody else but himself.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also, I've never seen an unhappier looking person who constantly tells us how happy he is. This is not a happy man. He's bitter, bitter, bitter.
No.
And there seems to be no end to the bitterness.
Yes. No, and you have to remember our dear late Queen had to suffer this too before she died, because she also watched the Oprah Winfrey interview and thought, what on earth is happening here? Why didn't Harry come and talk to me about this? So she went to her grave, actually not knowing the truth, with great distress, which Harry compounded in her final days of her life.
Well, I honestly think the Queen will be turning in her grave, reading all this stuff and reading the fallout, because not only did that Oprah Winfrey interview air literally a couple of days after Philip was taken to hospital, and as we later know, died within several months, but the book has now come out within 3 months of the Queen dying. And there is his response to the death of our great monarch, is within 3 months to do a book which causes severe damage to the institution that she represented so magnificently for over 70 years.
I totally agree. And Piers, you remember those boys growing up. You saw them grow up. You came to Kensington Palace. Now, in those days,
Wait for it.
Diana always had the final word. So I'm going to leave you with my words, which I think Diana would be saying right now. She'd be saying to Harry, jumping up and down, wanting to be noticed, shh, Harry,
You serious?
be quiet.
Yeah, you do wonder who on earth is having that conversation with him. Well, let's go to Trisha Goddard. So, Trisha, you were there on Good Morning Britain on the day, the morning after the Oprah Winfrey interview aired. We had a pretty lively series of exchanges on that show. As you know, I left Good Morning Britain the next day because I was asked to apologise for disbelieving her claims of racism. I said I wanted to see evidence of this so-called racism. We now learn from Harry's own mouth that they did not call the royal family racist after all. So I'm not quite sure why I had to leave my job. Are you?
Very good question.
Yes.
Well, go on. Why?
Because they actually didn't use the words racist.
Oh, please.
And would you like me to finish?
No, I'll tell you
They
what I want to do,
didn't
Trisha. Before you go any
Stop it.
further, I want to play you what they said on Oprah. Then you can repeat what
Okay.
you've just said. Let's watch this.
Okay.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
What? About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
What was that conversation?
That conversation